It's the Tommy Sandhu podcast here with Nikhil Arora from GoDaddy. Who do we speak to today, Nikhil? I'll let you tell the people.
Well, there are always people who are blessed with some good names. So we spoke to Nikhil Naz, one of the leading sports broadcaster.
And a great guy. And we should say, we spoke a lot about cricket, but here is a broadcaster that is exactly what you said. And you're right. He covers all sports across the mediums that he covers it on. He was at the India Today offices when we just spoke to him just now. But we got into it. We got into it not only with everything that's going on with Virat Kohli and the captaincy and the India team and the glory days, movies. We spoke about 83, the recent Ranveer Singh film, but also about him and what kind of drives him. And I know drive is a big thing that you're about, Nikhil, like what motivates people to kind of take their steps and start their journeys.
Yeah, I think it's great to hear his story of, how coming from an army background and then venturing into totally something very risky like broadcasting and continuing the passion. And also he talked about the break he took, right? Sometimes you do get burnt out in your profession and you need to stop to do what you're doing to really recharge and come back, right? So some great lessons of just personal journey and, how to get better and better at your own, journey you're following.
Yeah, there you go. So if you're a lover of cricket and if you're a lover of sport in general, if you're a lover of all things desi, and in fact, you're maybe just on your own path, your own journey, wondering where it's all going, how to turn your passion into a reality, this is a great podcast for you. This is Nikhil Naz on the Tommy Sandhu podcast with our good friends GoDaddy and Nikhil Arora. Nikhil Naz, welcome to the Tommy Sandhu podcast here with the other Nikhil. It's two Nikhils. It's going to get confusing, guys. But Nikhil Naz, say hello first of all.
Hi there, lovely being here, and a big hi to my namesake.
There you go. You wait all your life for one Nikhil and then two turn up at the same time. I mean, how's that work?
What are the chances?
Mr. Naz, where are you in the world right now? Where are you broadcasting from for the podcast?
I am joining you from Noida, that is on the outskirts of New Delhi, and this is called Film City, which is effectively where all the news organizations have their offices.
Okay, so is it quite a glam sham place to be? Is it quite sexy and exciting with stars and big names and drama?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the right word you've used, drama for Indian news. It is a lot of drama here. And yeah, it's the place to be. I mean, it's always buzzing. And I love the enthusiasm and the energy of a newsroom. I've been part of it for the last 19, 20 odd years. So I absolutely love it. I took a sabbatical in the middle and realized that no, slow life is not for me. So I'm back to the excitement of the newsroom and I'm loving it.
See, that's interesting. So you tried to go all spiritual and relaxed and realized, no, hang on a minute. No, I'm a beast.
Yeah.
No, I'm a beast and I need to be living in the jungle. The gentle ocean is not for me. The most important question about a busy media newsroom center like that behind you, and it looks huge, is what's the canteen like? What's the food like in the place?
Well, I tell you, the food used to be amazing. That is before the coronavirus and it's where I am at the moment is called a mediaplex, and it's no less than a multiplex in terms of there's a small little food court here where you can actually go to different stalls and pick the kind of cuisine that you want, but now all of that is out because of all the corona protocol in place. You just have that one little mess sort of a place running where you have a pre-plated meal. That's not too exciting, so I tend to carry food from home. But I'm missing the pre-corona days. It was far more exciting then.
Exactly. Are you a food man? We love our food. I talk about food all the time. So
I love my food, and I'm good at my food in the sense I can tell you small little hole in the wall anywhere in India, and I travel extensively for food. So I live to eat. I could talk about food for the next 1 hour more than sport if you'd like.
Okay, wait. We'll get to the sport because Nikhil can ask the sport. But now that we're on the food one, right? I just got to know. Okay, what's your electric chair meal? You're about to go on the electric chair, Nikhil, for crimes against broadcasting, right? What are you gonna get? What are you gonna go? You got one last meal. What will it be?
Oh, really tough. I could pick so many things, but I'll tell you what. I'll go with some chicken chettinad with some hot appams to go with them. That'd be my choice.
Chicken chettinad. What is it? What's a chettinad? What's that?
Chettinad. So that's Chettinad is a place down south in Tamil Nadu. So from that place, the spices from there, that's called Chettinad, and Chettinad is a cuisine by itself. So it's way beyond. I mean, a lot of Indians think South Indian food only means idli and dosa and all of that. No, they've got a whole affair when it comes to non-vegetarian food. So some chicken chettinad, it's sea chicken in some thick gravy, served with some hot appams. Appams are like these steamed pancakes that you could use as roti. And yeah, that'd be it. I'd go for that.
It's definitely not for the weak. Definitely not for the weak-hearted. He's right. It's as spicy as you can get.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, Nikhil, Arora. Then, as a business manager, as an analysis of life, what does that say about this man? What does that say about Nikhil Naz, Nick? The fact that he wants a killer spicy dish to finish him off.
I think you got it right the first time. He wants to live in the jungle. He's the beast. So it's the variety of life he likes. Always on exploring new things.
Yeah, give it to me. Give it to me hard. I'm gonna go out with a bang. And I talk about going out with a bang. We're reliving at the moment a big kind of celebration. It's just because it's all over the news at the moment. The film 83, celebrating those glory days of cricket. When cricket came into its glory. But the film is getting it's had a kind of muted response. I don't know, how would you describe it? How's it going down, the film, for cricket fans and people in India?
That's for Naz or for Arora?
Yeah, for Naz.
For Naz, yeah. Okay. No, so I happen to be one of those lucky ones that went for the premiere of the film with the star cast and the players themselves. I mean, I enjoyed it. Being a cricket fan, I enjoyed the film, and I had a personal, sort of an interest in the film because I'd authored a book on the '83 World Cup 2 years before that, and I really wanted to see whether the film, is on the same lines as the book that I'd written, and I quite enjoyed the film, I must say. It's not done very well at the box office, I think primarily for two reasons. One was, it came during, the corona pandemic, and while the theater started opening, and it just coincided with the third wave just emerging here in India, and then you suddenly had the theaters closed down. So that may have been one reason why it didn't do too well. The other being, I think, we sometimes think that cricket is a religion in the country. It is, but there's a lot of star worshipping that happens in India as far as the sport is concerned. And because this film is of the '83 cast, which does not kind of resonates with the new age generation, that are watching a lot of cricket. You and I might know of a Kapil Dev and a Sunil Gavaskar and know how big names they were while they were playing cricket, may not have resonated with the masses as such. So, and it was a lot of cricket in that. So it's essentially, chronicling every game that India played. Sometime that doesn't appeal to everyone that's watching this one. Had it been more of a human story, it is in certain parts, of course, this film too. But I think the cricket here is a lot more. And while we may appreciate it as connoisseurs of the game, may not be for the general public at large, the masses. If I could draw a parallel, if you remember, there was a film on an Indian athlete in Milkha Singh, which did very well at the box office. But I think the reason there was because it was more of a human story than his exploits on the track. I think it tried to discover where his background was from, and then how he came across during the partition, and all that internal battles that he had. So it became a more human story, and I think more people sort of associated themselves with that, or that resonated with more people. I think here there was pure cricket, a lot of cricket, but I think that was restricted to only a few of us who may have enjoyed that. Yeah.
Could it be though? Because we did have Farhan Akhtar in a vest. I'm just saying the vest factor.
Yeah.
If cricket was played in vests and Kapil Dev was wearing a vest, then Ranveer Singh would have had an excuse to work out. I think that it's a sport that lends itself to vest wearing more so than smart shirt wearing. So I think they missed
I don't think so.
Yeah. So,
I don't think, Tommy, the West wouldn't have done well. In those days, the gym access wasn't that great as it is now. So.
Hey,
but to be fair to Kapil Dev, he had a very muscular body. He would have carried off the vest. And since you talk about the West, I don't know, the first image that comes to mind is Freddie Mercury in his vest, playing cricket, maybe something like that. I don't know. May have worked for all cricketers.
We are the champions, my friend.
Yeah.
We are the champions.
Yeah.
Nikhil, do you remember those glory times? Do you remember the '83 and that era and the excitement around cricket?
I do.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You've written a book about it. I was going to go, Arora. Sorry, I'm now going to refer to you by your surname. This feels like I'm in the army. Arora, Naz, speak up. Aurora. What was it like as a fan at that time?
Yeah. So obviously I was able to obviously I remember all the things they talk about, like when the TV coverage went out, when we were doing the final and so on, right? I think one thing I want to add to what Naz just said, right? That why did the movie did not do well? I think they were the players, right? The story was very much anchored on Kapil Dev, and believe me, I'm a big fan, and he was he's the guy who carried the team with light leadership. But there were a lot of unsung heroes in that team, right? And while the movie talked about here and there about who they were, it didn't go into depth of it, right? For example, there was a 12th man in this movie who never ever bowled, right? Who never ever bowled. Remember when there was a scene when the Binny was about to be dropped and picked, and they ultimately decided to go with him. That guy, that was end of his career, but he was an unsung hero, right? Until today, I've met him. He was working with Delhi Daredevils, now Delhi Capital. So there were a lot of very small nuances, and if it had brought those things out much more powerfully, even people who didn't remember that era would have related to the tenacity and the hard work and everything. And so I think that's the one part. But one thing about the movie, that this was, all these guys, all the characters, all the players, even today, if you meet them, the most humble people now, right? Because it was like as if there was no expectation for them to win, and they came out of nowhere, right? So I think that was the beauty of the whole movie. But we wish it would have done well at the box office. But I think there is still much more to come with the Omicron slowing down. I think it will come back.
Just to add to what Nikhil Arora has said, I think that's the limitation with the medium as such, the film medium, where you just have about 2.5 hours, and to pack everything there, and probably that's where you sometimes miss out on those nuances. I think the better idea would have been to have made a web series out of it, because I think it's a perfect story for a 10-episode web series. But if you want the nuance, you want some more elaborate, talk about the '83 World Cup, pick up my book. Apologies for plugging my book, but you need to pick a book to get into all the nuances and the detail of that, because again, that's the medium, right? It allows you, it has that much scope, it allows you to get into the nitty-gritties of everything that happened at the time.
How sincere was that apology? I don't think you should be apologetic at all. Because no, let's be honest, we're not backwards about being forwards here, particularly on this podcast, and I don't expect you to be, Nikhil Naz, either. So don't ever apologize for getting a plug in. That's what gets us to where we are in life. But on that note, this is what you do. You watch the human story behind the sports player, and I know you love all sport. I've seen and read all about you, and I know your love for I think it's games in general. But where does that come from? I mean, does that come from almost being a natural storyteller yourself? Do you want to relay the story of what goes on? Is in you a narrator and a writer, or is in you a lover of sport, or a combination of the two, and in which kind of proportion?
Well, I mean, I would like to think it's a combination of two. I mean, it all started with love for sport. So that's all I did in my growing up years. My father was a sportsman, and so the life was all about sport. I would either go watch a lot of live sport with him. He played as well. So he was in the services, and the services in India, the army has a very robust sporting setup where there's sport of all sorts. So it's not just people relate to, let's say, a cricket or a hockey, but in the army you play all sport, from volleyball to handball to basketball to every sport that you can think of, cross country, running, all that. So I grew up watching a lot of them because he used to participate, and I'd go and watch that. And then I picked up a lot of sport in school. I went to a boarding school, so we played all sport. And the cool thing about boarding school is it's not the kid that does really well in academics that's really remembered. It's the guy who does very well in sport who's the most popular kid, right? So that's what you wanted to be. You want to play all sports. So I played a lot of sport, I think. And then because I had a fascination for history as a subject, I used to love listening to stories of the past and then narrating them in my own style. So I think there was a stage in my life where I realized that I may not be a professional sportsman. I may not have it in me to become a professional sportsman, but I want to be in the field of sport, and I want to continue working. And then storytelling is something that I enjoyed. So I kind of mixed the two and joined the journalism college, and I finished journalism from there. And so, yeah, that's how it went.
How brilliant that you found your thing. So many people go through life not knowing what their thing is. Here you have two passions, or two early signs, I suppose, in your life that these are things that you love and enjoy. And you've got to do it for what? How many years now? How many years in this game of it all?
20 years. This is the 20th year. I've finished 20 years, yeah.
Do you ever think, oh, when I grow up, I might get a proper job? Do you ever think that?
I do. And maybe that's the thought that, crossed my mind. And I said, hey, listen, it's too much of fun. And 5 years ago, I quit everything and quite literally went up to the hills and I got myself a place there and I started living there for a few years. I enjoyed it. But that's, I think, the whole rush of getting back to the newsroom and to commentate on sport, what sport for a living. I think it all came back. It helped me like reconfigure where I was and what I really wanted to do. And so now that I'm back, I think know uh, whatever little burnout it started to set in, I think I put that behind me, and now I'm enjoying it even more. So yeah, I mean, if I had to live my life all over again, this is exactly what I'd want to do. I wouldn't change a thing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, Nikhil, Arora and I talk a lot about people starting their dreams, giving their dreams a go, taking a step
Yeah.
towards your dream. You know, you did it. You're doing it now, and it's very easy now to kind of go, oh, Nikhil Naz, yeah, household name, broadcaster, yeah, he does all these. Cover this. He can cover the football. He can cover Olympics. He can cover, this is what he does. You're obviously a natural raconteur, talker. This is what you do, but taking that step in a ferocious media world. Where did tell me about the balls that it took, not in the sporting sense, in the metaphorical sense, to actually take that step to go, turn around to mums and dads and family and friends and say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go be a broadcaster.
Yeah.
Was there any resistance? Was there obstacles, or was it like a fairly gentle path in?
Well, so it's interesting that I think it would make for a perfect Bollywood film if I had to tell you that story. My dad, as I said, had a big influence on me growing up, and he'd tell all his friends that so when his friends would ask him, so what's Nikhil up to, and what's the future looking like? What does he want to? He said, I mean, what's there to talk about? He's going to join the army. That's what my father did, and his father before that, and everyone in my family did that, and so that's exactly what he expected out of me as well. So he thought he'll go down the road of giving the NDA exam, joining the National Defense Academy, and then from there on join the IMA. And just like his dad or his grandfather or great grandfather before that, joined the army. But when he realized, and also I think he didn't think that I had the dedication or the required skill sets needed to become a broadcaster. So he somewhere in the back of his mind knew that even when I was trying to aspire to be one, he's like, no, he's going to go back and do exactly what his dad thinks he will. So when I actually got my first job, and that happened through a very organized campus placement sort of a thing, like folks come into these colleges and look for talent, and I was interviewed and spoken to, and there was a gentleman there who's now a huge name in the industry. At that time was looking after a news station, Uday Shankar. He then went on to become the president of Star India and was heading Star Sports and all other networks under him till very recently. At that time, he was running a news organization, which happens to be where I am at the moment, India Today Group. And so I wanted always to be a production guy, as in someone who produces live visuals of the feed. But he thought that I could do something on screen and I could come and talk about a match or analyze it, talk about it. So he's the one who first actually thought that I could do this and offered me a job, which was good at the time, your first salary, decent job offer. And even at that time, my dad didn't really think that I'm going to go ahead with it. But then I packed my bags one day. So my folks are in Pune and I'm in Delhi. It's been 20 years that I've come here. So I packed my bags and left, and me and my father never spoke, and he wasn't too happy me taking up this job. It's many years later then we reconcile, or he reconciled to the fact that no, I think he's got something in him and he'll make a career out of this. And so from there on, I just worked here for a few years. I moved organizations to different places, and it just so happens after good 18, 19 years, I'm back to the place where I started. So this is that. I mean, the office was somewhere else at the time, but this is the organization where I started from. So I'm back here.
See, that's interesting, isn't it? Arora,
Yeah.
Nikhil Arora, because we talk about Nikhil Arora and I talk about self-belief all the time, and having that belief in yourself, getting your domain name, starting your business, getting it rolling. But here, your self-belief was almost triggered, driven. The catalyst here is an external person's belief. Somebody else who's come along, hey, I think you've got what it takes, you should be on camera or whatever.
Right.
Nikhil, I mean, Arora, tell me how that works in a business sense, because it's one thing having your own belief. How's it to what extent should we weigh that up with other people telling us what we could do or should do?
Yeah, I think there's a very famous saying which talks about that, greatness lies in all of us, but we don't need to find
Yeah.
greatness in people. So, good leaders and good mentors, when they find you, right, they are able to unpack that greatness. So, a lot of times, even as leaders, right, when you have the employees, we're trying to build them into something they are not. And that is the biggest flaw of leadership, I believe, because everybody is born and gifted with something, and a good leader, good mentor can spot that and really help you unpack that, right? So it's a perfect example where perhaps in this case, Nikhil Naz case, I mean, obviously, the external influence, both sometimes what he doesn't want to do and what he wants to do, right? Obviously the family pressure, which I totally understand, like, okay, it's like grandfather, father, and everybody, right, has to be in the army, but also knowing that this is not exactly what I want to do, and here's my talent, right? So I think having that right set of support as you move along, right? In this case, you got this first break, right? And the first break is very important because that's where the confidence builds for you, right? Because that certainly opens 20 other paths for you, right? And so it's obviously a belief, a little bit of luck, and really, that, hey, ready to kind of embrace failure, right? And I think in Nas case, that's very obvious that he did that.
In fact, the first time that I ever anchored a program, I mean, I joined this organization, my first job, and I was mostly reporting, as in I'd go and cover a story, in which case you just tell the story of what's happened. It could be a tournament, it could be an interview, and then come in and, file that story. So I wasn't really a face in the sense that I would go with a camera person, film that story, come back, write a script to it, and present it on air. But it wasn't a presenter as such or an anchor as such. The first time I got a chance to anchor, that was, I think it was in the first or the second year of my job, and the regular sports anchor had to be sent for some other important news that day, and there were two of them, and it just so happened that the backup guy also, I think it was during one of the Euros or a football World Cup time where the match timings would be early morning as well as night. So the other anchor, the backup anchor, had done a very late night show and wasn't available for a very early morning show. So I just come to office, I had no idea, and my producer goes like, so you're on air today and you're anchoring. I had never practiced, never had a teleprompter, never done a live bulletin, and I hadn't even shaved that day. So I was like, what do I do? So I ran down. He said, no, I've spoken to the boss. He's already, just go on air. So I went down, I found a salon, got myself a nice shave, called up my mom, told her that, listen, hey, at this time I'm going to be on air, maybe a couple of hours from now. And I tell you what, first bulletin, I go in, and that there's a teleprompter, and so the producer had told me, don't worry, I've got all the links for you. Just read off the teleprompter. There was an ex-cricketer who was next to me as a guest. He said, you know a few questions after you do those stories. Ask him a couple of questions, and from there on, just go. So fine. So there's a teleprompter operator as well, as in the PCR, who's going to be scrolling the teleprompter. Everything said, I've got my talk back on, and I'm getting that countdown, the 10, 9, you're getting an all set. When the countdown reaches 2, my teleprompter goes kaput. It's gone, right? It's just gone blank. I don't know what. And then my producer's like, Q, you're on air. And I tell you what, it was a winter's day. I still remember, and Delhi getting cold. I was sweating. I said I must have done some introduction. I had no idea how to ad lib, I was completely relying on that. But luckily, my expert, the guest that I had, the cricketer that I had, he kind of took over. He realized, so I threw a question to him. He knew that the teleprompter had gone, so he took a long time answering that question. By which time, I think they fixed it and it came on, and then from there on, the bulletin went on. But yeah, that was baptism by fire, and from there on, I think it was smooth sailing.
But they always say, like when you have that little blip early on, and you had it on the minute one of your career, it's like in Punjabi we take, nazar latki. So you got the nazar bit out the way. That was that bit. That was like, okay, there you go. Got it. Had the fumble. Now what more can happen? Now the teleprompter's working. It's plain sailing. Okay, we touched upon leadership. I got to get your thoughts on this, because we might leadership and taking control, and you being a leader, and the leaders in around you, and someone spotting your skills. Let's talk about our leader at the moment, Virat Kohli of the Indian cricket squad, and who's next up, and what will happen post South Africa. So, what as a lover of the sport, first of all, rather than as a broadcaster, what comes to your mind? Who comes to your mind, and why?
Right. So it just so happens that about a couple of hours ago, I finished an interview with KL Rahul. He's still in South Africa. He was captaining India. I've just finished that interview right now. And I asked him those questions as well, because again, for him, it wasn't a great time that he had leading the team. They ended up losing that one test match that he captained, and then lost the ODI series as well. And he was very candid in accepting the fact that I think what he said was to the effect that the Indian template of how we've been playing white ball cricket needs to change completely. He said we need to look at ourselves in the mirror and then change the way we're playing. So winning is losing is another thing, but the kind of cricket that we're playing may have been outdated. We really need to now rediscover ourselves, find the right template that we need to adopt going forward. So that was a candid admission, I thought. He also said that he knows that he's been criticized a lot for his captaincy, but it takes time. He said my career has been like that. When I got a chance to play for the Indian team, I didn't have a great start, but slowly and steadily I settled in. And he thought that as a captain, with time, I think he'll settle in. But yeah, who's the guy right now? And that's been the biggest talking point that we've had here in India. And I've done multiple shows already with former cricketers like Mr. Gavaskar. We had a Ravi Shastri interview yesterday on our platform. Again, all of them talking about, I think, the number one contender, and that's a no-brainer. It's Rohit Sharma, right? So he is a leader already. We've seen that in the IPL. He's led his team really well, very successful at that. Whatever limited opportunities you've seen with him in Indian cricket as well, seems to be a leader there. A lot of players respect him, and I think that's very important. The team actually looking at you as a leader of men, and that he has that. The only thing that goes against him has been his fitness, whether he's fit to play all formats, and in which case can you then have him as a test captain too, because he tends to miss out on these long tours. So that's the only problem. But if he's fit, I think it's a no-brainer. You just give the captaincy to Rohit. He's already a white ball captain. So that's sorted. And maybe groom someone. Again, this is something that Mr. Gavaskar suggested when I interviewed him a few days ago. And I tend to agree with him. Rishabh Pant, I think he's got that leadership skills in him. We saw while he was captaining the Delhi team. I think he's his own man. Having known a few people in the Delhi franchise who've mentioned to me off record that, even in big meetings, you've got stalwarts like Ricky Ponting sitting in the dressing room as coach, and sometime you allow them to take the call, and then you as a young leader tend to follow what they're saying. But he's his own man. He's disagreed with them in meetings. He's gone with his instincts, and a lot of times his instincts have worked as well. In taking some crucial calls, he says, "Fine, I'll take that call. If it fails, I'll take the brunt as well." So these are things that you look at young leaders, and those are things that I've learned about Rishabh Pant from various other players who know. So I think he's the guy you can groom for the future. For now, Rohit Sharma, give it to him.
Yeah, Nikhil, just one question follow up, right? I mean, Rohit is a great guy, obviously. The other thing which, it almost reminds me of an analogy of a situation, if you remember, when Kumble took over the captaincy, right? It was because of the age, right? Rohit Sharma is about 34, 35, if I'm correct, roughly around there, right? So the age is a factor. And so he's kind of, in that sense, a very, the kind of the runway is a little small here, or little, it's not as long as we'd like to be. And with Kumble, before Dhoni took over, there was a lot of like that kind of situation. How do you see that? Because, Rohit, not only the fitness factor, but the, age factor is also there, right? I mean, and how do we get that right?
So, which is why I suggested groom someone like a Rishabh maybe for a year, 2 years under Rohit Sharma. And it's a great analogy as you talk about when you had Anil Kumble take over as Test captain, because you're just given the ODI or the white ball captaincy, T20 captaincy to an MS Dhoni. He was a youngster. I know this, and at that time I used to travel a lot. So I was traveling with the team at the 2007 World Cup, the 50-over World Cup, a World Cup you want to forget, probably the worst phase of Indian cricket. And at that time, the fallout that happened, and then you picked someone like a young MS Dhoni. I know that the seniors like Rahul Dravid and Sachin Tendulkar suggested his name, but they thought because he's still young, to give him the Test captaincy may not be the right time. So give him that one-day captaincy, the white ball captaincy, and then who were you going to look at? Because Sachin didn't want a captain; he was the senior at the time. Rahul had given up his captaincy after that debacle at the 2007 World Cup, so you didn't have a senior pro to go to. Saurav Ganguly by that time was struggling to make the 11. So you didn't have one guy, so you had to select one guy who's going to be in the playing 11 and be a leader of men. And I think Kumble was a great choice. He got some great result as captain as well. So in that interim, you gave Kumble the test captaincy, and then when he played his farewell test match, that happened right here in Delhi at the Firoz Shah Kotla. He got injured in the middle of a series and then had to relinquish his captaincy. And at that time, by that time, Dhoni had got a few years in white ball captaincy, so he was ready. I think that sort of an interim arrangement can be done where your go-to guy is Rohit, but you're right, his fitness is an issue, age is an issue. Groom a young guy, maybe a Rishabh Pant, or if someone else you have in mind, maybe a KL Rahul if you're looking at him, or a Jasprit Bumrah, whoever the selectors feel is right. Groom him now, 2 years later, give him the captaincy when Rohit's about to say bye-bye.
Yeah, but hang on a minute. Now, okay, I'm not a sporting man. I like sport from a bit of a distance. So I look at things slightly different. And I'm thinking now, you're treating Rohit like he's a fling, right? You've come out of one relationship, you want a bit of sexy time with Rohit, but you don't want him for like marriage material. You're saying, no, don't worry. I got my eye on Rishabh Pant. When he comes in, I'm ready to marry Rishabh Pant and I'm going to settle down with Rishabh Pant. We're going to have a house together and all this stuff. But for the meantime, Rohit, just come in and dazzle me. Now, how does that make Rohit feel, knowing that he's only a temporary, interim fling? That's no good. You got to make us feel special, is what I'm saying. I know you know how to make people feel special, Nikhil Naz.
Yeah. No, so to tell you what, firstly, if you know Rohit, I don't think he's going to behave like a jilted lover. He's the most relaxed, laid back kind of a guy. I don't think he's going to have a big problem with that. For all you know, he's the kind of guy who might even tell the selectors that, listen, I think you're right. Just get this guy ready, get the Pant ready, and he'll take over. And he's been one of the supporters of Rishabh Pant. Recently, when there were a lot of question marks about Rishabh and how his performance with the bat is dipped, he played a very good inning in a test match in South Africa. And Rohit, who rarely tweets about cricket or what's happening around, put a tweet out praising Rishabh Pant. So he's one of those guys who backs someone like a Rishabh. And if you were to ask Rohit, he's an honest guy. That's the best thing about him. There is no, a smoke screen when you're talking to him. He's honest. He'll tell you things the way they are. If you were to ask him, he himself will tell you that he doesn't see himself playing cricket for very long because of the recurrent injuries that he's having. He may have to let go of a few formats. That possibly could be test cricket, even though he's now, found himself in his second avatar playing really good test cricket in the last couple of years. But I think because he's that white ball captain and he would want to be a World Cup winner. You've got the T20 World Cup coming this year. Then you have the 50-over World Cup the next year, which will be in India. And he'd be leading the team there in white ball cricket, which has been made, very clear by the selectors. So I think he would want to win that. In that time, he's also captaining test cricket, and that's going to be an honor for him. But if you have this conversation, I think he'll be very open to it. I think he's not that kind of guy. He'll say, fine, groom a young guy, get him ready because I'll be gone in a couple of years. I don't think he'll have any regrets leaving cricket as well.
Yeah, Tommy, I had a question, if I may, for Naz. One of the other thing which is really bothering me on cricket, and I remember I was on a panel with you back in 2020 when the pandemic had just started.
Yes.
We were the BCCI.
I remember. Yes. Yes.
The administration part, right, which is the business part of cricket, right? What's transpired in the last few months is not something we all are happy about, right? As cricket lovers, between the Virat Kohli issue, the BCCI, and without getting into the controversy of it, but the way this whole thing got handled wasn't the best of way to handle it, right? And that's affected the psyche of both the fans as well as to some extent on the field, right? Any thoughts or perspective? I know it's a controversial issue, but until we talk about it, we don't take it head on. There's just better ways to do it.
Well, I couldn't agree more with you. I think, things could have been handled better. As things stand right now, and no matter how much, the BCCI denies it or the Indian players deny it, there is a residue of that fight that, or that, whatever saga that played out between Virat Kohli and BCCI. In fact, more than the BCCI, it was sort of Ganguly because it ended up being my word against his and who's telling the truth and who's lying and various things. And it played out in public eye, it played out in the media. So I think that didn't do too well. You can clearly see that pressure. And now, it's not something that folks in the media are suggesting, but even former players. Ravi Shastri, as I said, he did an interview with us yesterday where he suggested that a lot of people were not happy. They couldn't digest the fact that Virat was doing so well in terms of being a captain and becoming the most successful captain. And so there was outside pressure. He's clearly hinting at that pressure from the BCCI. I mean, he didn't have to dots together and you know who he's talking about. So clearly this could have been handled better. It may have been a case of two alpha male colliding and no one wanting to take a step back, and that's what may have happened between someone like a Saurav or a Virat Kohli. But it's at the end of the day a misunderstanding, right? It's not that he wants to take out a dagger and really kill the other person. I don't think that's the situation it reached. It was a disagreement over the captaincy. Obviously didn't go down too well with Virat. Saurav said one thing, and then Virat came out and said, no, what Saurav is saying is wrong. It never happened that way. Chairman of selector comes back saying, no, what Saurav said was right. Virat is wrong. I don't know who's right, who's wrong. But yeah, better administrator. See, this is where, when Saurav came and became the BCCI chief, a lot of people started hoping that, listen, cricket gets better because you finally have got a player after cricket. These administrators are corrupt, throw them out. But now look back. I think administration is a different skill. That's why you look back, someone like I.S. Bindra or Jagmohan Dalmia, or all these stalwarts of BCCI, they are the ones who've taken BCCI to where it is at the moment. So administration is a different skill. A player is a different skill. Will a good player become a great administrator? Maybe, maybe not. And probably that's what we're saying. So I think it's not always wrong to criticize administrators and say that, listen, throw them out, give cricket in the hands of the cricketer. May not be the right thing. And this episode is kind of proving that too.
Yeah. Cricket is as big as it possibly ever has been right now in India. And you talk about, all of this stuff that you're going on, the controversies, the BCCI and the power they have, and the captaincy is almost, it's up there with the prime ministerial role, that one can take on. Just coming back to you though, in the there, you love the game, you love games, you love sport, right? You love talking about it and analyzing it. How do you keep out of the, excuse my language, how do you keep out the crap? How do you keep out, I don't care. I don't care about the boards and the this and the that. I want just to watch cricket. And I'm saying that, I suppose, from a personal point of view. I am a stand-up comedian. But when you have to analyze comedy and break it down, it takes the muzz out of it somewhat. Oh man, just can we not just get on it? Or when you have to do your taxes, and do all your expenses forms and all, you're like, oh, this is no fun. I just want to be on stage doing jokes. So, and here you are, you must, because there's a fine line now with what you do as a broadcast, where you're being pulled into the conversations around the sport to do with the sport rather than the gameplay itself. Do you still enjoy it? Can you still enjoy that part of it?
Well, there's no escaping that. Let me put it this way. How do you escape that? Because at the end of the day, whatever is happening at the periphery, as we're talking about, there's this whole thing playing out between a Virat Kohli or Saurav Ganguly, it is affecting the cricket at the end of the day. So India's had a disastrous tour. Of course, there are various cricketing reasons for that, but there's no denying the fact that because of everything that played out and this entire ugly, episode playing out, it has had an impact on the players. It has affected whether it's the camaraderie of the team, whether it's made a few players insecure, whether it's the leader who's saying, no, I don't want to continue, and then the rest of the team is kind of leaderless at the moment and don't know which paths to follow. All of this has happened as a byproduct of what happened between the board. So there's no escaping it. If you love sport, you want, if you're a fan of Indian cricket, you want the Indian team to do well, then everything needs to fall into place. And a lot of it is behind the scenes. It's much like an athlete, right? So you love Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer, whoever. We tend to forget the trainer or the mental coach or whatever they got, a masseur, or whoever they have in their team, the ones who are working behind the scenes. And it's a lot of pieces that come together to complete the puzzle, and which is when you see a Roger Federer playing the way he does or a Rafael Nadal playing the way he does. So I think similarly for cricket too, apart from all the support staff that you have in terms of coaches and trainers and everything, the BCCI, the administrators play a huge role, and that's why the focus on them. It's not primarily because of the money that they command or the kind of rights that are being sold. That of course is another way that attracts you to BCCI and the news around the BCCI, but it's also how they're managing the game, because if they're not doing a great job, it tends to affect the performance, and it's all related in that sense. So you can't ignore it. You have to follow it for the greater good, or if you want the best for Indian cricket, you'd have to report everything that's happening, because those are the checks and balances, right? If there is a media who's questioning what's happening, then we'll have those checks and balances, and the entire power that is within the BCCI, they'd have to rectify. They'd have to in a direction that is sometime they may tend to lose what the road ahead is. And because you have these checks and balances, it puts them on the right path and go forward.
Yeah, and I think, Tommy, this is a perfect analogy of there's a sports and there's a business of sports, right? And ultimately, the output is sports, which is what we all love. But if the business is not managed well, the whole system is not managed well, the output would be not something we'll enjoy, right? So I think shutting your eyes off to the administration part, the business part, only will make the sport more worse for us, right? And I think it's been a long talked about issue in India also, right? That sports has to be managed like a business professionally. IPL did help to some extent, but I think we still have a long way to go about what is who, like you need to have the right marketing people, you need to have the right man management people, you need to have the right skill set of people. And Naz referred earlier, right, that it's not like a sports person cannot become a good administrator, but he or she needs to go and learn the skills. And are they willing to go and learn the skills, right? Because if you're a great sports person and if you think, oh, I know everything about sports and I'm just going to run the business, perfect recipe for failure, right? So it's the same analogy we see in business day in, day out.
All right. Well, then just before we wrap up, there's broadcasting, and then there's the business of broadcasting and the people around, the people that support the broadcaster. So let's finish on you, Nikhil Naz. Who's your support team? Who gets you through it? Because it's tough. You're going from game to game, and tournament to tournament. If this was who's the BCCI for Nikhil Naz? Who's in the family? Who's in the inner circle? Who's in your corner? To use a boxing analogy, who do you go to between rounds?
Many people. Again, the most important person is your producer. He's going to make you look good or make you look like an idiot on air, because he's the one who's managing the show. And also the direction of the show. So it really helps to have a producer who knows his shit, if I can use that word. He really needs to know what. He really needs to know where the game is. And a lot of times I've been blessed to have been working with a lot of great producers. A lot of them who let you know where you may have faltered when it comes to certain stats or when it comes to certain player that you're talking about, and they always got your back. Edit those things out, before they go on air. Sometimes if it's live, they just remind you that you may have said this, and send you a private chat on the other end, and then you rectify it. So I think a producer there, your camera person are very important, especially when you're out on the field, because when you're telling a story, and especially because I'm in a visual medium, we tend to forget that I may think of various things that I'm at an event and I'm absorbing everything that's coming, but how do I relay it to my audience? And those eyes are my camera person. So a lot of time, you may not be seeing a thing, it's the visuals that he's creating. Those will help you tell the story in a compelling manner. If he's done a shoddy job, no matter how good your script is, you could write the best scripts in the world, but it's never going to convey the message especially in a visual medium, in terms of the shots that he's taking. So you got to be one with him. You have to think alike. He needs to know your vision, you need to know his vision, so work in unison, and that's when you get the best story. So a lot of people, families, a wife at home or kids at home, they need to be supportive, in the sense this job is a 24/7 job, right? You're always on the job. You're leaving your home at unearthly hours. You're working very late at night, depending on the match schedule. So if you've got an understanding wife and kids at home, I think that makes a huge difference. It allows you to concentrate on your work. So plenty of folks there.
You said if you've got an understanding wife and kids at home. What are you saying?
I'm saying not everyone's as lucky as me. How's that?
Okay, good. You got it. I thought he glazed over it in a very broadcasting style and fashion. I thought, oh, hold on, what's he saying? Like, if you happen, that does help. Like, I don't know what that feels. No, you're right. It's key. It's key. And do you miss that? You must miss the family a lot when you're out and about them. That must be the hardest part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I miss that. And that's why probably my traveling is reduced now. Over the years, when I was a young professional, before I was married, before I had a kid, I would travel a lot. I mean, there were times that I'd be out 8 months of a year, just traveling with the team, covering, tours everywhere. And I enjoyed it, but not anymore. So mostly now I'm from the studios, which will be a broadcast space, let's say Delhi it is. So I'm mostly doing a lot of work from studio. You have younger guys who really travel, get you the stories from the ground. But I'd be the guy who will put all of it together and then present the show, being in your head office. So that's the role that I've now started doing more than traveling. And I don't really miss the travel now so much. I'm happier being at home. I love to travel with the family though, but for work, I'm okay being here in the studio.
There you go. I think that's a lovely way to wrap things up, to say thank you to the wives. Thank you to the understanding wives and families that allow us to do what we love and enjoy. And Nikhil, clearly, you love and enjoy what you do. I think it's lovely just to have someone just sharing their passion. I mean, that's what me and again, Nikhil Arora talk about all the time, is dreams and passion and going for it and doing what you think, what we all think we're put on this earth to do. And I think you're definitely doing that, man. So keep smashing it. And there's lots of cricket tournaments going on, and hopefully with the Bharat Army and things like that should be covering a lot of the games and be seeing you at some of these events. Will you be in Australia at the end of the year? You planning on a T20 World Cup?
Maybe not, but it's too early. Most of our plans are made just like a month before the tournament starts. That's when you really sit down and then chalk out a plan, as in who travels, who stays here, depending on the kind of people that you have. So that'll all be decided, I think, closer to the tournament. So too early to say.
When do you have to submit the visa form to your wife? When does she have to know about the dates?
Oh, well, only when I get to know from my workplace, but she's free to turn it down, and then I have to go back and say, hey, listen, I ain't going.
And Tommy, while we're thanking the wives, I think, Naz, I don't know if it was by design, but since you come from an army family and you are wearing something which represents the army, I think that's a good regard to your parents and your grandparents.
Yeah. I tell you, it is the biggest coincidence, because that I thought it was going to be an audio interview, so I wasn't ready for a video interview, so I didn't know what I was wearing. And tell you what, if you told me it was a video interview, I probably wouldn't have been wearing this. I would have worn my nice, studio jacket. But it just so happened that we did it. And by the way, I've worn this jacket after a long time. It'd just been lying in my cupboard. I don't know why. I just picked this out today and I wore it, and it just so happened that we spoke about it. Signs from up above.
It's all meant to be. No, brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
Nikhil Naz, thank you. Nikhil Arora, pleasure as always. Thanks for being on the podcast, bro. See you soon, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care, guys. Bye.
I heard, genuinely, this is just as a fact, I heard that if you hit subscribe to this podcast now, if you have subscribed on Apple or on Spotify or on JioSaavn or wherever you are listening right now, if you are subscribing and getting that on a regular, which means you get the little notification when the new episode comes out. Fact. This is a fact. Don't tell no one else's. If you hit subscribe, you can eat as many jalebis as you want and you will never put on weight. I know. I don't understand the logic. It makes no sense to me. I mean, how's a podcast relate to the DNA way in which your body breaks down jalebi sugar stuff running through your cell? I don't understand. But what I do know, it's a little cheat to life. So if you like jalebis, then you should hit subscribe to this podcast. Oh, and follow us on social media too. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Follow us. Eat jalebis. Be happy.